Hello, everybody. This is the second time we're trying this, and hopefully, I'll do a better job adding my collaborator. Let's see. There we are. Did it work? Did it work? Did it work? Yes!
Made
Two,
it!
two for two.
Woo.
It's like I'm a tech native. Hi, Jen.
Hey, how are you?
I am well. Nice trees behind
I-
you.
I'm home this time, so you guys are going to get like the guessing game every time as to where I am. So this time
Where,
I'm at home, so this is my
where in the world is Carmen San Diego, aka Jen
correct.
White?
Correct.
Well, the beautiful Connecticut trees, the
I,
foliage.
it is, at least I have some evergreens because it's nasty outside, right?
Yep, yeah. It's pretty gray here in New York as well, and
Yeah.
I think it's going to be like 20 degrees tomorrow, but
It's 11 for us overnight.
11. Oh, look at that. I've got a few extra degrees keeping me
I
warm.
know. I'm like, I'm
Um,
come down and hang with you just to get that few extra degrees.
I'll be here.
Excellent. Excellent.
Okay, so
We haven't. Oh,
normally, for those following along,
yeah.
normally we're going to be doing these at night, figuring it's just easier for people to join rather than in the middle of the workday.
Yep.
But I had a conflict tonight, so here we are. Thank you
That's
for
right.
hanging with us. And our theme
It's a tough
for
one.
this
I'm
week,
not gonna lie, this was a tough one.
is it? I
I
don't
think
know.
so.
This is one of my favorites,
It,
but
it's a fun one, but it's a tough one.
okay. Well, I want to hear why you think it's so tough, but here we go. The theme, just to say for everybody, it's playing matchmaker. How do you choose the right surrogate? So that in this case, we're sitting mostly in the intended parents' shoes and the different considerations that they have in figuring out who's going to carry their child, which is a huge decision.
And the reason I think it's tough is that every program has a different philosophy on how to do this.
Hmm.
And so that makes it really hard for us to have a big generalization conversation about what is
Yeah.
the right way to make that choice, right? So, for example, I don't know what your philosophy is. You go next, but like ours is that we actually do, because we're a small program, our matching is super individualized. We send one profile at a time to intended parents, and that's it. Okay, so it sounds like you do very similar, but
Yep.
there are programs out there you see out on the internet that people, gestational carriers are like, nope, I should be allowed to look at multiple parents' profiles at the same time. So in that case, the carrier is making the first choice. And then
Hmm.
there are services like that are out there that are just basically like, like you go on there and it's, I mean, I don't want to say it's like a dating profile where you can swipe, but like some of them are like that, right? So how are you making decisions in all of those
Yeah.
situations because the pressure is on different party on either side, right? So like if you're choosing first as parents, you have less pressure on making a decision. If the carrier has chosen you, there's a lot of pressure on you as a parent to feel like you have to choose them.
Hmm. So we do it that way, where the profile first goes to a surrogate. It is still one at a time. It's very serial. This is in almost all cases after the clinic has approved the surrogate's medical records too. So there's a lot of sort of inefficiency, but also like faith that people are placing in us as an agency to get this right. And I never want that to be felt as pressure, but I understand that it is. But we want to try to prevent heartbreak by knowing that their doctor is already on board. And in our view, knowing that the surrogate is already excited to meet the intended parents and sort of making them the final decider, then, if they say yes, the match meeting goes well, we're off to the races. But I think there's a lot of reasons why people do it in a different way. And I'm not going to say that like our way is better. It's
I think
just
we're
sort
both
of, yeah,
fine. We've chosen a philosophy and we go for it, but it
yeah,
changes the tenor of the conversation about how to choose the best gestational carrier, right? Because if
it
you're
does.
looking at the profile, if you're the first look at the profile, then you have a very different lens view than if you are looking at a profile where the gestational carrier has already chosen
Right.
you, right?
Right. Right. Yes.
Conversation came
And
from.
I think it's important also like how agencies then present that choice and the way they frame it. And I regularly tell intended parents that when I was in their shoes, I said no to the first profile that I was presented by our agency back in the day because it didn't feel right for us. And so I don't hold that against them. If we didn't get this right, we didn't get this right. Like this really needs to feel good because you're putting so much trust in each other.
And I think that's actually an interesting kind of like take one step further back
Yeah.
from the actual choosing your gestational carrier. Choosing your agency is what you do first, right?
Hmm.
And that's that first really important conversation of what is your philosophy around this, right? Does your philosophy around matching fit mine? Also, what happens if I say no? Are you going to hold it against me, right? There
Yeah.
are programs that, like, my philosophy is anything, they stay on our list exactly where they have been the entire time. I have heard of programs out there that you get 3 strikes. That's it. And if you say no to the third profile, then you go to the bottom of the list. And that's also unfair to intended parents because by that third profile, you're not making a choice anymore. You're making
Hmm.
an absolute pressure decision. So it comes down to the philosophy of that of your agency too. So it's like you have to almost take one step back before you're
Yeah.
even at that point.
I mean, to be honest, we've never had intended parents say no to 3 profiles, so I've never even been in that position because I think if we get a no from the first one,
You
we want
learn.
to know
Yeah.
all of the reasons why this didn't feel right and have
Yep.
a really frank conversation so that we absolutely get it right the next time. And the same is true on the surrogate side. I know we're
Mm-hmm.
presenting from a particular perspective in this Instagram live, but if a surrogate says no, I want to know all of the things that, like, even minor little things that rubbed her the wrong way, where she was just like, I don't know about this. Like, I want even the smallest hesitation and doubt so that we get it
Yep.
right the next time.
Yep. And I think that's the other thing. And that's the nice thing about both of us being smaller programs is, right, we, and I'm not saying big programs can't learn, right? But,
Yeah.
we have that ability to be a lot more hands on in that way and learning. Because I do similarly, like if parents say no, I want to learn every little thing about why you said no, because
Yeah.
then I won't present you with another profile that doesn't meet your needs. And we have the same experience, but the other side is that it's really unusual for a gestational carrier to say no, even though she's second, because we've learned so much about her in the process that we hope our matching has been really good and we've gotten it right. Does that
Yeah.
mean that, like, my favorite example always is I always say, like, if you as a parent didn't tell me you have trauma surrounding a yellow parakeet in childhood and she owns yellow parakeets and you say no, like, I can't know everything about everyone, right? That's why I need to
Hmm.
learn to never send you a profile of somebody who owns yellow parakeets again, like that kind of thing. So
Yeah. In fact, that's I mean, it wasn't yellow parakeets, obviously, but we had a case recently where we felt like we were making a really strong match, but the reason the intended parents were turning to surrogacy was a particular thing for the surrogate's husband based on something in his family history that there's no way we could have known about. And so he was particularly hesitant about that match, and it's okay. We went back to the drawing board. She's matched. Those intended parents are now matched with a different surrogate. So that's okay. But yeah, I like the yellow parakeet example. I might
I
steal
I
that
like
from
it
you.
because it's so unlikely to be
Yeah.
true. I hope. Like someday, I was telling somebody that example, and he's like, "I do have trauma," and I'm like, "Oh God!" And he's like, and I'm like,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
okay. So philosophies aside, right? Take a step back. Like,
Hmm.
right? Like, what should people be looking for in a match with a gestational carrier? And I think we can agree on the big ones, right? So
Yep.
number of embryos to transfer per transfer attempt, and I will say most agencies and clinics only will do single embryo transfer now.
Yep.
Um, Stance on vaccinations, and it's a four pronged conversation, not just a do you vaccinate, COVID, flu, Tdap, RSV. I know we as a program we ask if people's children are vaccinated, if the carriers' children are vaccinated as well, just because
Mm.
if they're not willing to get one vaccine, that gives you a good insight as to whether or not they are pro-vaccine in general, or if it's just that one vaccine, and then we can dig a little further.
Yep.
And the third big one is stance on termination, right? No right or wrong, just making sure that people are in alignment.
Yeah.
And then it's down to what people's vision board is, like as to kind of what they want and see in a particular gestational carrier.
Yeah. And I would say, just for anybody who hasn't been part of one of these termination conversations, it's not about um, necessarily what you would choose in different scenarios. It's about who gets to make the decision.
Yeah.
And so, probing on like hypotheticals that the intended parents wouldn't make that decision, but let's just hypothetically say, when faced with an actual decision, God forbid, they did, would you still be willing to defer to that decision that they're making for their child? And that's really tough, just the sort of mindset shift. And
I think generally people don't know how they would actually respond in those situations. They think they know,
yeah,
but they don't know until they're faced with them. I mean, I
right.
always like throw in my personal, when I was pregnant with, and this was a million years ago because Ash is about 20, but they did the triple screen. And I got a call from the doctor's office, OB's office, and they said, you need to come into the office tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Well, they don't open until 9. So I instantly knew something was wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went in and they said, we don't know what's wrong. And it became a problem because my husband was on an airplane on his way to Iraq for 4 months.
That's a problem.
We suddenly had to be faced with a conversation. We didn't know what was wrong, but it was my last chance to have that conversation with him before he left the country and was unreachable. And it was astounding, the gamut of, like, I'm very pro-choice, pro-women, like, all these things, like the things that went through my own head that I was really surprised about. I was just happy ending out there. Ash is great. They're fine. It was a mistake. They actually ended up swapping my blood in the doctor's office, which was completely, that's a whole other thing.
That's a malpractice suit right there.
Yes. But so, I mean, but the point is, like, we didn't even know until the moment we actually were, a million conversations, what decision we would have come to until it hit us, and that's why it's about hypotheticals.
And you're going to have doctors weighing in with different prognoses, and maybe there's a second opinion, and there's uncertainty about, like, a lot of conditions have a spectrum of presentations, and you don't know exactly what's going to happen in your child's life as a child, as an adult, etc.
Right.
So it's impossible to cover all the hypotheticals, which is why it's about the decision maker and in the abstract. And so anyway, yes, those things are definitely the fundamentals. Some of the other considerations, geography. Do you have a particular constraint around where your surrogate is located, whether that be just about how close she is to you?
Or how close she is to a NICU. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. How close she is, like, what's the medical care in her area? Is she planning to deliver at a hospital with a high-level NICU? Is she willing to? Is she close to it? Then termination laws in her state, and whether it makes you uncomfortable that she would potentially have to travel out of state in the circumstance that was required here. Her experience as a surrogate. Has she done this before? Has she been through an IVF pregnancy, maybe even of her own?
Right.
And then there's the financial picture. What's her compensation? Is her insurance usable? What are her lost wages like? Is there a disability insurance policy that would cover some of those lost wages? So it ends up, I think, for a lot of cases, like, my advice, and I'm curious what you tell your clients, but my advice is, like, this is a holistic picture. And it's rare to find somebody that is absolute perfection and checks every single one of your possible, like, dream of dreams boxes. And so I warn people against getting hung up on the thing that is a mismatch, right? Her local hospital doesn't have a level 3, it has a level 2 NICU.
Right.
Maybe, she hasn't been a surrogate before, and you're worried about your precious few embryos, and that's a totally fair consideration. But um, there's a sort of overall picture of, is this somebody who I can trust because I'm not going to be living with her?
Right.
I'm entrusting her with the most precious cargo imaginable. Do I know that she's going to be looking out for me and my child in the way that if I were in control, I would be able to? And there's so much anxiety about just having your child be gestated over there. And I think more than any of the individual criterion, it's about, does she seem like somebody I can get along with, communicate nicely with, and just trust?
Yep.
And I don't know how to, we factor all these things in. We make sure the clinic is on board. We make sure it does check the fundamental boxes for both sides. But that trust piece is so, it's tough.
Right.
It's,
And
yeah.
it is a gut feeling is what it really comes down to. And I will say that sometimes we've even done like a second match meeting because
Hmm.
sometimes both parties were so nervous, or one party was so nervous
Yeah.
that their first impression was just not what we know them to be.
Yeah.
And so, we've said like, hey, are you willing to do a second time? Because at least now she knows what to expect, or the
Hmm.
parents know what to expect, right? It's happened. I've seen it happen both ways. Impress each other, right, at that match
Yeah.
meeting point, and it just ends up something not quite seeming right, even though it's completely fine. We do have a question at the bottom that
Yeah.
says, what are some of the reasons IPs would say no to a profile of a gestational carrier their doctor has approved who wants to work with them? And I mean, I can think of some, but I say you have more experience on that side, so you go first.
Oh, sure. I mean, I can provide my personal experience, but very eager to hear what you see as sort of patterns in that sense. For me, I was just talking about the overall picture. When my husband and I got the profile of the first surrogate, she seemed like a wonderful human being. But I had questions about whether she was prepared for this, honestly. There was like a stability picture, and it wasn't like one thing alone, but she had just moved, just started a new job, just gotten out of a relationship, just gotten over an STI. Her income level seemed like around the poverty line, to be honest. She had attended a religious college, and obviously she had seen her profile and said yes to gay men, but I just didn't know how that would go. And so and there were even more things that I'm not going to get into, but like the overall picture was like, other than her mother, who was somewhat local and was supportive and would be a part of this, like I didn't get a sense that anything in her life was settled and she was ready to take this on, because of just, career changes and life changes and everything had happened so recently that it just worried me that, like, if something was tough, if this was a rough pregnancy, if, things didn't just work out smoothly and quickly, that, uh, maybe her commitment. I don't know. It was just a sort of sense. And the agency, to their credit, did then go back to the drawing board and present kind of the polar opposite. And I had zero doubts or hesitations about the fantastic woman who did carry my older daughter. Even though, from a medical perspective, she had three prior C-sections. And as you and I both know, like that
That's
is an
generally
immediate
no.
disqualifier
Yeah.
for a lot
Yeah.
of clinics and a lot of doctors. And everything worked out beautifully for us. But, I think she might have actually been the tougher surrogate for that agency to match. It's just
Right.
for us, we were looking for different things.
In our office is that there's a lid for every pot, right? So it's not that
Hmm.
there's a tougher match, it's that it's the right match for the right person,
Right.
right? It is what it really comes down to. I will say that like some other things that I've seen for people, the reason they might say no, even though the profile's been approved, is you hit on it earlier, is financial.
Yeah.
Is that like, hey, you know what? We had a very specific parameter that we could only fit within this box of how much
Hmm.
surrogates, like all of her things together. And so, you add in her compensation and her maximum out of pocket and her, lost wages, and suddenly
Hmm.
she's outside of our parameter as parents that we can bear. So I mean, nothing about surrogacy is cheap, right? Like that's
Yeah.
just the way, unfortunately, it is. But there are levels of things that no amount of insurance or disability, short-term disability, or things like that can take away that anxiety of how much it could potentially cost. And
Yes.
some of it is actually legitimately like, hey, we just can't afford this, and some of it is anxiety over how much the cost could go to, and that's a
Yes.
legitimate reason
Variability.
as well. Like you're trusting somebody to carry your heart outside your body, right? And anything that would cause you anxiety, too much anxiety, is a legitimate reason to say no, because you're going to be too tense and upset the entire time, and it's going to convey to her. She's going to know it, and
Yeah.
it's just going to make a miserable journey. So
Right.
that's a big one to me, and I think a lot of what you talked about, like a lot of the intangibles, that as an agency you just can't know, like what is going to bother somebody. And
Mhm.
some of it could be somebody was like, that stability level is totally fine because maybe her lost wages would be lower and it wouldn't bother them in that
Right.
way. But each thing has its own drawbacks, pros and cons.
100%. 100%. And then there's, I think special requests that are maybe out of the norm on top of what we've discussed. I mean, I don't, there's all sorts of horror stories in Facebook groups about like diet and lifestyle. And we honestly don't often have intended parents making particularly onerous requests of their surrogates. We've yet to have somebody be like, she must be vegan and, yada, yada. But there's things on the margins that, I think it's a intended parent's prerogative entirely to say like, hey, well, would you mind doing X, Y, Z, and we'll try to make it as easy and ease the burden for you and your family and make sure that this isn't a huge thing. But there's things outside of the box checking things, and even outside of a level of trust, that are sort of special requests, like, hey, avoid nonstick cookware, please don't microwave plastics, like things like
Yep.
that.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I mean, I had somebody recently. They had the match. They got to the match meeting. Both sides had said yes to profiles,
Hmm.
and afterwards, intended parent said, "Hey, you know what? She just doesn't have enough formal exercise in her day-to-day life." It really concerned them that she
Yeah.
wasn't active enough. And they couldn't know that by seeing a profile, right?
Right.
What that was going to be until they actually talked to her. So there's a lot of things that, and they hadn't expressed to us how important that was to them until they
Hmm.
saw it. Because the other thing is, like, this is not intuitive to parents. You don't know what you don't know until you're faced with it. So we can ask till we're blue in the face, like, hey, tell us
Yeah.
all the criteria, all the things you're looking for, all this stuff. You don't necessarily know until you see that first, maybe even second profile sometimes of like, okay, from this one I can tell you all the things that I didn't like about this one. You changed trajectory. Oh, okay, there's these other things that really concern me as well.
Right, you're
We're
sort of
all
ping ponging until we get to like it's like Goldilocks and the porridge, and like we need
too
the one
hot,
that's
too cold.
just right, and
That's right.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why it was a hard question because
Yeah.
it's so personal, like finding that right gestational carrier as a
Yeah.
parent. And it, so yes, there's some philosophy things, and there are some, I call them non-negotiables, like the number of embryos and the vaccines and termination. But everything beyond that is really sticky, and you're learning as you go as
Yeah.
to where your values fall in finding the surrogate.
Yep, yep. The one thing that we really haven't talked about, but is so crucial to matching correctly, is just expectations around relationship and communication.
Yep.
So I think this, more than anything, is one of the toughest. I don't know, from your perspective, it's one of the toughest things I think to get right, to make sure that both sides have pretty similar expectations of just what they want from each other, how frequently they're in touch, how they're in touch, what this relationship looks like. Because a lot of people, understandably, will say like, "Well, I don't know. Like, what is typical? Can we just see how it organically develops?"
And
And
you
and you
can't.
can. Right. But you can, but then sometimes it organically develops where, one side is not as involved or as in touch as the other side may have wanted. And now you sort of have a mismatch and there's feelings about that. And
And we
yeah.
break it into three phases is what we do when we talk about that. We talk about like during the pregnancy, right? Or during the
Mhm.
first part of the journey, like so meds, all that
Getting up to
stuff,
transfer.
leading up to
Yeah.
transfer, up to birth, and then birth, because that's a very unique piece of that communication
Yeah.
puzzle, and then afterwards as well. And I mean, like down to like we ask things like, how do you communicate best? Do you text? Do you talk on the phone? Do you need to be on
Hmm.
FaceTime with people so you can see their faces? Like, and so that can lead to like, hey, I'm a super busy mom. I've got 4 kids of my own at home. Like, if you send me a text, I need to know, like, you have to understand I'll get to it, but I may leave you on red for a little bit, kind of thing. So that people can start having that conversation
Yeah.
about how they communicate best. Also, and we just hit a realization with this. We had an intended parent group the other day and we're talking about it, is that how people receive feedback best.
Hmm.
And so we started talking about like the 5 love languages, right? And like how you give and how you receive as well,
Yeah.
which may be a huge disconnect between people because the parents may be like, I'm sending her gifts over and over and over again and she's not thankful. And it could be that actually what she really is, she's a gifted, a time person, like, and all she
Yeah.
wants is your
Quality
time.
of time.
So your gifts don't mean anything to her. And
Right.
so it's a very, like, there's a lot of things about communication that are absolutely, you're right, spot on, that make a big difference. And
Hmm.
if you want somebody who is able to, drop everything, every whim all the time, like sometimes people think stay at home mom's the best answer for that. Sometimes it may be somebody who's employed in a low pressure job because she may be
Yeah.
able to text you back as opposed to she's chasing her kids at home. And people don't think about that.
Yeah.
Oh,
We
I
just,
love it. Yeah.
yeah, it's just
I,
gonna, we gotta,
I have big feels about this, and I know who posted this. I don't
yeah.
think
Sorry,
that.
can you read the
Oh
comment
yeah, yeah,
before
yeah. So
you? Yeah.
sorry. The question that rolled up was that the match meeting was in person with no agency rep, but everything was discussed during the joint psych session, and I feel really uncomfortable with people matching without an agency being as part of that first meeting. And it's not because we don't trust people, it's not that we don't think they're grown-ups, it's that both sides are trying to make a good first impression.
Hmm.
And sometimes that means that the difficult questions don't get asked and answered because it's embarrassing, right? Like
Yep.
I ask carriers, I'm like, do you smoke? And it's not because I expect her to be like, yeah, I smoke a pack a day. It's because it's very different to see it on a checkbox, and as opposed to her go ugh, 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 like, so that
Hmm.
establishes trust right there. I mean, do I love doing them in person if we can? Yeah, but this day and age, a little more difficult.
Yeah.
But I think that the joint psych session, I mean, I'm absolutely an advocate, everybody should do those every match. It's the second date though. The match
Hmm.
meeting is the first date, joint psych should be the second date.
Yeah, especially because some clinics might have in-house psych programs where the joint psych is actually when you've already flown your surrogate across the country for a medical screening. And I have yet to have, I mean, maybe this is just because we're hopefully making thoughtful matches where people are actually aligned and we're taking the care, but I've yet to have a psychologist or mental health professional after a joint session say, ooh, it doesn't
Mhm.
actually seem like you're on the same page. And
Right.
so if that is mostly a sort of you guys seem to get along, like on you go, then I want to make sure that, like, I guess I think both of us want control over certain things, and we want to know that like certain things have been discussed and asked and answered, and we are also the conduit for the hard questions that one or both sides may not feel comfortable asking each other, but do want answered as well. And
Right.
so, that's the match meeting. Like, even though we've gone over certain things like vaccines and termination scenarios in again and again in profiles and conversations, I know it'll be part of the group psych session. I want to lead that discussion again and, make sure that everyone's hearing each other's answers and
Yep.
talking about communication in granular detail in the way we were just discussing. So
Right.
I'm
And
with
the
you,
person.
even for local matches, even for matches where the intended parents and the surrogate know each other already, we still do a match meeting and
Yep.
force them to have the difficult conversations that wouldn't naturally come up in their pre-existing relationship.
The number of times they say, "Oh, I hadn't thought of that,"
Yeah,
is astounding when that happens. And I will say to the person who posted, she said, "I think it was the agency's first match, and they
right.
learned a lesson." That's not the only. I know tons of programs do that. So you're just pointing to an example that a lot of programs do.
Yeah. And I mean, this is where I try to remind intended parents, since we're doing this from their perspective, there is no other relationship in their life, to my knowledge, where they will go from essentially complete strangers to discussing like all of the sort of third rails of US politics and like all the things you're not supposed to discuss in polite conversation. Like we're just
Within
diving right
the first
into.
hour, yeah.
Right. It's like right into like medical care and vaccine decisions and, termination and selective reduction. And what do you vision like when your kid is 5 years old? Are you still sending Christmas cards and pictures? And like, what is this all going to look like for you? And it's because I mean, how else do we go from essentially 0 to 100 in no time? Because within a few months, we're going to be transferring an embryo.
Right.
So we just have to like rip off the band-aid metaphorically and just like really go there right away.
Yes. Yeah. It's I love somebody underneath who's like, I wish that the beginning of every relationship was in life was facilitated this way. And probably would have saved many of us a lot of dating heartbreak
Right.
in our lives.
Yeah. It's like the question of like, do you want kids on the first date?
Right.
And like it's heavy and maybe you don't know and you don't even know this person yet, but also nice to kind of know that you're on the same page about something that might be fundamental to what you're hoping for. And so yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. No, I still, I'm going to come back to, I think this was a hard one. And I think even going the other direction, same thing. It's a hard one I know we're going to touch on it soon, is the other direction of choosing
Yeah.
IPs, equally hard. It's,
Yes.
it's a big decision for both sides. And I never want anybody to feel minimized
Yeah.
or unheard in if they make a decision one way or the other. Like it's valid decision for you. Saying no to a profile should absolutely, for no reason, should be a valid decision as well.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just that programs, we just don't learn if like we don't know what to learn from if you don't tell us. But
Mhm.
it sometimes it's just a gut check.
100%. Yeah, so I think that's a good place to leave it since we're at the half-hour mark. I think
Yep.
our next one is going to be about how surrogates should think about choosing their intended parents, different considerations for them. But this has been great. Glad to see the Connecticut trees. I'm
I
curious where you'll turn up
Where
next,
I'll
Carmen.
be in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll be in my actual office next time. So amazing. Thank you
Awesome.
all. Thank you everybody for showing up and commenting. And thanks, Jared. It's always great to see you.
Of course, of course. Bye, Jen.